Shalom Aleichem. Today is the 27th day of the Omer. We count the Sfiras of Omer from Pesach until Shavuos. 49 days. Today's number 27. Tonight, that's in Hebrew the numerical value of Zach. Chaf Zayin. Zach means pure. What a great start to a Devar says to Moshe. And Emor and Omer sound alike, but they're spelled differently. They have different letters. Emor is with an aleph, Omer is with an ayin. Moving on. I'm going to talk a little bit about that and some fascinating things about or what it means or how we are meant to love our fellow Jew and related topics. But first, I'm just going to quickly fix last week's story. Last week's running commentary story, there was a story about Yizkor. I don't know what got into me, but I made a mistake in the story. It's a story I've heard since my childhood, but somehow I had a senior moment. And the story was that this woman went into seeking the Alter Rebbe, the first Chabad Rebbe, about an issue with her baby not coming out after it was long overdue. And the person whom she thought was the Alter Rebbe was really posing as the Alter Rebbe. Ended up being Reb Shmuel Munkus, a very close chassid of the Alter Rebbe, but not a Rebbe himself, told her to say Yizkor 7 times, and the baby will come out. And then she came back to the Alter Rebbe to thank him, and the Alter Rebbe said, "I never told you to do something. What? I never gave you this. We never spoke about your baby." And she said, "Yeah, you told me to say Yizkor 7 times." I said, "Oh, I know who it was. It was Shmuel Munkus." And Shmuel Munkus said that when the Alter Rebbe called him in and said, "Why did you tell this woman to say Yizkor 7 times?" He said, "Well, when we say Yizkor once, all the children go out of the synagogue of the shul. So sure, if you do 7 times, anything will go out, including the baby, the stubborn baby." And everything worked out well. That was that story. Moving on. There's a fascinating story that I heard just recently. I heard main part of this talk is from Rabbi Shneur Ashkenazi. He's a great man giving talks in Israel on YouTube in Hebrew. So I'll translate some. A story was that there was this some friends, very wealthy friends, were traveling somewhere in the old days, and they got stuck right before Shabbos in some Hicksville where there was nothing and no one. And they were from observant Jews, and they needed wine, challah, a little piece of gefilte fish, and they were very upset. And they finally found this one home in a Jewish home, a home with a mezuzah, and they came and they said to this man, I guess it was a little Jewish community, and it was already Shabbos was already setting in, and they said, we're so embarrassed, and we feel so uncomfortable. We're usually on the giving side. We don't take anything from anybody. We never needed to take a dime from anybody, but now we're stuck. Is there a chance you could give us some challah or some wine or a piece of gefilte fish for Shabbos? And he looked at them, studied them a bit, and he said, you know where you are, right? You're in Hicktown and it's almost Shabbos, and you're not going to get anything anywhere else. You're welcome to come stay with me, but it's going to cost you. It's going to cost you like 5 times the amount a regular hotel would cost, and 5 times the amount the food would cost. And they were, what are you saying? I mean, it's so expensive and this and that, but they had no choice and they stayed. Friday night they come to the meal, and there's a lavish meal put out on the table, and they're still uncomfortable because they're feeling like beggars. But then one of them nudges to the friend and said, "Hey, why do we feel so bad? We paid for this. We paid full price times 5. Let's go." And they dove in and they ate and they enjoyed themselves. Same thing happened the next day. They were uncomfortable, different circumstances. Second meal of Shabbos, and they were uncomfortable eating. But then they remembered, hey, they paid full price. It's theirs. And the guy had the chutzpah anyway to charge them so much. They enjoyed every last bit. Moving on, Saturday night comes, and they come to thank the owner, the host, and leave. And he gives them back their money. And they said, what's going on over here? So he says, as you can see, thank God, I don't need your money. But I saw, when we first met, I saw that you would not enjoy the Shabbos if you were begging, if you were coming as beggars, if you had to take something from someone else. But I know you enjoy things that you pay for. So I let you enjoy the Shabbos. I let you pay for it full price and more, and now you really enjoyed it, didn't you? This is a story, whether it happened or not, I don't know, but it's a story that is demonstrating how our Ahavat Israel, our hospitality, our Achnasat Orchim, is meant to be exercised in a way that the recipient doesn't feel like he or she is a recipient. They should feel like they're doing us the favor. And so to this man, in a funny way, in a unique way, he made his guests feel like, oh, they paid so much, they're doing him a favor, now they can enjoy themselves. So that's a cute little story. Moving on to the content of our talk today. We're in the summer months between Pesach and Shavuos. There's 7 weeks. It is customary all over the Jewish world to learn Pirkei Avot, to learn the ethics of our fathers. Pirkei Avot is a Mishnah. It is a Mishnah which is generally the Jewish law, but it is unique in that it doesn't tell you how to put on tefillin or keep Shabbos and kosher, etc. But it tells you morals and values. It guides us in being a mensch. So it's the Torah of menschlichkeit, of being a mensch. That's what Pirkei Avot are. And we learn it between Sfiras HaOmer, during Sfiras HaOmer. So why do we learn it during this time? There's multiple answers given, but the two main ones that I've come across in my life were, number one is because we're entering the months of the summer in which the human temptations rise. There are more opportunities to get out and do fun things, and sometimes they're not exactly what God wants us to do. So we solidify, we condition ourselves better to be better equipped with these holy teachings of how do we go beyond the letter of the law, not just things that we need to do because they're laws, but Pirkei Avot is about beyond the letter of the law, lifnei mishurat hadin, and how to be a mensch. Another reason, and the Hasidic take on this mainly, is that we're approaching Matan Torah. We're approaching God's giving us the gift of the Torah at Mount Sinai, which happens on Shavuos. And for that, we need to prepare. So during the Sfiras HaOmer, there's 7 weeks, and we have 7 character traits that we refine, or we're meant to refine during these 7 weeks. You can look more on Chabad.org. Chabad.org has an amazing app. Dr. Tzvi just told me about it yesterday, or 2 days ago. It has amazing, beautiful teachings about character refinement all throughout the 49 days. So get the Sfiras HaOmer app on Chabad.org. That's a plug. So that's why we prepare. We learn the Pirkei Avot on the Shabbosim, on the Shabbatot between Pesach and Shavuos. Some of the greatest names that are frequently mentioned in the Mishnah, and especially in the Pirkei Avot, are Hillel and Shammai. Hillel and Shammai were 2 great sages, and everyone who knows a little bit about the Talmud knows that they were at odds with each other. They pretty much argued about everything, but I think 6 things that they could agree upon. And there's thousands of arguments or disputes between Hillel and Shammai. Yet, they were still best friends. And so were their yeshiva students. But moving on, in the first chapter of Pirkei Avot, it says, and throughout, it says a lot about these great sages, what they would say, how they would act. And the quote would be, Hu haya Omer. Hu haya Omer means he would say. This is something that represents his essence. He would say. A fascinating, surprising quote about Shammai was, he would say, Hu haya Omer, aseh Toratcha kivah, make your Torah establish your Torah set times, make it internally established. Emor ma'at v'aseh harbe, speak little and do much. V'hevei mikabel et kol adam b'sefer panim yafot, and receive every person with a kind countenance, with kindness, with a good face, with a smile. Now, anybody who knows a little bit about Shammai knows that this is really not what we know about him. He wasn't the person who welcomed people with a smile. The Talmud tells us many stories, but 3 specific ones we'll talk about today. About converts, non-Jews who came to convert. And in the end, all 3 of them converted. But the story goes that they first came, these were separate times and separate places, but they came to Shammai, and Shammai chased them away. Then they went to Hillel, and Hillel welcomed them and embraced them. And then they all grew into nice Jewish citizens. What were the stories? Story number 1 is that a non-Jew, and these are all great people in their own right, these non-Jewish people, they were academics, they were wise, they were real quality people. Otherwise the Talmud wouldn't tell us their stories. So the Talmud says that the first story is that a non-Jew comes to Shammai and he says, Shammai, I want to learn the Torah, I want to become a Jew, but I only accept the Torah shebichtav. I will only accept the written law, not the oral traditions. Shammai, it says, he spoke harshly and he chased him away. So he went across the street to Hillel and he says, I'd like to learn Torah, but only the written word, not the oral tradition. And Hillel said, okay, come, let's learn some Torah. And he taught him first day Aleph, Bet, Gimble, Dalet, Hey, in that order. And then he said, okay, come back the next day. The next day he comes back and he starts teaching him backwards, Dalet, Gimble, Bet, Aleph. And the man said, wait, yesterday you taught me otherwise. You taught me the other way. Like, why are you changing it now? So Hillel says, did you trust me yesterday? You believed me yesterday? He says, yeah, I believed you. So he says, okay, you believe me about the teachings of the Torah? About this, you could believe me also. So when I tell you that the teachings, the oral traditions, are just as important as the written law. And he took that and he accepted it and he became a full-fledged Jew. Second story was about the most famous one. The most famous story that most people know about is that a man comes to Shammai and says, can you teach me Torah on 1 foot? Teach me the whole Torah on 1 foot. And Shammai, it says, Dachafo be'amat habinyan. He took a beam of the building and he chased him away with it. Whether he hit him really hard or softly, I don't know. But he definitely told him that he wasn't welcome. And so he goes to Hillel and he asks him, can you teach me the Torah on 1 foot? And Hillel says, Mada Allah Sani. He welcomed him. He said, Mada Allah Sani l'chavrach lo tavid. What is hateful to you, don't do to your friend. V'idach zehu kol Torah kola. This is the whole Torah. Love your fellow as yourself. In other words, don't do what you don't want to be done to you. V'idach zil gemor. And the rest, go learn. Zil gemor. So that's what he said. That's what Hillel said, and then he became a Jew. And moving on. So there was a third story. Excuse me. And then there was a third story where a person said a non-Jew was going by the cheder where they were learning in Shammai's area, and he heard them talking about the Kohen Gadol, the high priest, how honorable he was and how honored he was, and all the garments that he had. And I guess this would be the Kohen Gadol. Again, Shammai chased him away with harsh words, and Hillel welcomed him. And he said, come, let's learn. And he started learning Torah. And when he came to the place in the Torah where it says, Hazar HaKarev Yumas, that one who is a non-Kohen will come close to the Holy Temple, will die in the places where you can't go. The man said, wait, if a Jew can't go to the place where the Kohen can go, how much more so a non-Jew who wasn't even born in the fold can't become a Kohen Gadol. And he said, okay. And he realized and he recognized that he can't, but he was welcome. So in all three stories, Shammai chased him away and Hillel welcomed them. And now we're going to go to beautiful, fascinating understanding. Some things I'm sure many of you have heard this story before, especially the middle one. Teach me the whole Torah on one foot, right? Now what does that mean? So we just learned a beautiful explanation. And they say it was quoted by the Arizal, the Kabbalist Arizal, and it was repeated or explained by another person. I'm trying to get his name over here. Anyway, so he says, what was that story that this man was asking? Was he really serious? Who can learn the whole Torah on one? Was he really serious about his question? Like learning the whole Torah is broader than the sea answer. So this man says, of course, the Kabbalistic take on this is fascinating. He says, teach me Torah al regel achat. Regel achat. The word regel in Hebrew means foot. But in the Torah, regel also means time. Like pa'am achat. Like in one time. Like it talks about where Bilam and the horse and the donkey he was hitting him. He was hitting the donkey, and the donkey opens his mouth and says, why? Why are you hitting me these 3 times? So he says, so the word regel also means time. So this would-be convert is asking Shammai, or now Hillel, says, can you teach me the whole Torah in one time? Meaning to say, I know that the Jewish tradition tells us that we come back to this world in many reincarnations, many gilgulim. And the point of that is that every soul has to go through all 613 mitzvot and observe all of them and learn the whole Torah. And until we do that, we come back again and again until we finish. And he said, I don't want to come back to this miserable world. I want to just finish everything in one time. I want to finish my mission in this one time as a Jew. How can I do that? How can I not come back again in another reincarnation? And Hillel answered him, in Hebrew, otherwise, if you love your fellow as yourself, if you love every Jew with your heart and soul, then you become part of the whole. And now when you become part of the whole, it's considered whatever one person does, you're like part of the group. It's considered that everyone else does or did. So if you didn't have a chance to do some agricultural mitzvah, but somebody else did, if you love that fellow truly, then you unite with him or her and you become one with the mitzvah that they do also. So everyone here shares. That's what Hillel said. When you love your fellow as yourself, then you are sharing. It's like a profit sharing. You're sharing in the mitzvah that they do. And now, what about the other mitzvot that you cannot do and even all of your friends haven't done yet? Because let's say, for example, today we have the Beit HaMikdash, but there's so many mitzvot that are related to sacrifices that we can't do. So what about those mitzvahs? So he says, the idach zil gemor, and the rest of it, go and learn. Because the Talmud tells us that if somebody learns Torah about a mitzvah, it's as if they fulfilled it, as if they performed that mitzvah. So Hillel was telling him, learn all the mitzvot that we're unable to fulfill today. Go ahead and learn about them. And it's as if you did them all. So parenthetically, a few weeks ago, about 2 weeks ago, or even less, we just started a new cycle of the Rambam, of learning the Rambam, Maimonides. The Rebbe instituted this for this. One of the reasons was for this reason. The Rebbe said that everybody's supposed to learn the whole Torah. You're supposed to fulfill the whole Torah and learn the whole Torah. And the Rambam, and every mitzvah in the Torah, the teachings of the Rambam, the 14 books of the Rambam that we have on our annual cycle or 3-year cycle, is a mitzvah, is a book that contains every single mitzvah in the Torah, every one that ever was or ever will be. So when we learn the Rambam, if you plug into that, you're good to go. You don't have to come back again, unless you really want to. So that is that. And then these 3 people, so that's a plug for the Rambam on Chabad.org/Rambam, and plug in and join thousands and hundreds of thousands, maybe even millions of Jews who are learning Rambam every day today. These 3 people, these 3 non-Jews who became Jews, these converts, they converged one day and they said, they came together and they said that the harshness of Shammai could have killed us, and the humility of Hillel saved us. And we're going to wrap up over here with a little bit more about that, about the Alter Rebbe in Tanya. He also says, what did Hillel say? Hillel said, love your fellow as yourself. In other words, he said it in other words, but that's the basic idea. And the Alter Rebbe said, a measuring point of whether or not you love God. How do you know if you love God? Is if you love the Jewish people, if you love his children. So Hillel was saying to this convert, he said, do you really love God? Let's find out. Do you love every other Jew? If you truly love every other Jew, then it's a proof that you love God. And we're going to wrap up with, the question. I didn't answer the question. The question was now, Shammai, in the Pirkei Avot, his main quote is, welcome everyone with a graceful face, with a joyful countenance, with a joyful presence. And that really wasn't him. So the question is, why we know so many stories about Shammai being strict and being harsh, sometimes even brutally harsh. So how could it be that Shammai's quote of being a mensch is to be graceful to others? And the Rebbe says a fascinating thing. The Rebbe says that if you look at the Pirkei Avos, and this quote comes right after Hillel's quote. Hillel says, Havemi Talmidav Shel Aaron, be of the servants of Aaron, Ohev Shalom, Rodef Shalom, Ovei Sefiris Mekaver LaTorah, love peace, pursue peace, love all of God's creation and all the human beings, and draw them close to the Torah. So, and right after that, it says Shammai Omer. Shammai says, the Rebbe says, Shammai learned from Hillel. It's never too late to learn new tricks, says the Rebbe. And Shammai and Hillel had different characteristics in their soul. Hillel was Isha Chesed, was a kind man. Shammai came from the Kav of Gvura, from the line of strictness and harshness. So he was less of a social bug. Hillel was a social story where the Baal Shem Tov said that everything you hear, kind of message that God is giving us. And some chassid, once upon a time, was staying in a hotel, in an inn, in a krachme in Russia, and he went downstairs. He sees, or by the fireplace, there were 2 drunkards. So they were standing by the fireplace. There were 2 drunkards, Ivan and let's call him Vladimir. And Ivan says to Vladimir, he says, Vladimir, they were completely drunk. He says, do you love me? And Vladimir says, of course I love you. He says, we've been drinking together since we were 3 years old. So Ivan says, you don't love me. You really don't. So he says, well, of course I love you. We've been together forever. So he says, Vladimir, tell me, what am I missing? What's bothering me in my life? What do I need? Why don't love me? If you would love somebody, you really know what's bothering them, what they're missing, what they're lacking. So that's a message that this chassid took for Avas Yisrael. The way we're supposed to love another fellow Jew is not just say that we love them, not just think about it, but we actually should act on it and reach out and find out what is my friend missing and how can I fill that? How can I make things better? That's the story for today. God bless you guys. And remember to count the Omer. Last night was 27. Take care.